Good morning. Thank you for attending today. We're here to have a briefing on the Kainga program. I'm going to pass over to officers to present the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, councillors. I wanted to quickly introduce the team who are here. To my left is Tom. Tom's running the housing development team at the moment in acting capacity. We've got Seb, who's the program manager, Chris next to Seb, who is the program development manager, so he looks after sort of getting all the buildings ready for the tenants, and of course Vida, who's been looking after the unit since Paul McCorra's departure. So the agenda today loosely is setting some background and context for you all, and I understand there are some new councillors here, of course, and so I wanted to take my time to sort of step you through the origins of the program as well. I'm then going to look at really a bit of a market update, because we came back to the council in May and advised them about the market conditions that were prevailing at the time, and you set us some new targets. We'll look at refreshing on the objectives and how we're managing and governing the program, quick chat around benefits, and then run through the portfolio for you. And Andrew, yes?
Sorry, and I just want to let everyone know, so there's two sections within this meeting today. We've got public participation meeting, which we'll go through first. That should take about 10 minutes with 10 minutes for questions. And then we're going to move into public excluded session, as there's some items that have commercial sensitivity around them, and that will be the remainder of the meeting.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. So my last point was, of course, Tom and the team will walk through some of the financials in the current state, but we'll do that in PX. Okay? Great. Well, firstly, councillors, thanks for the tour. A lot of you turned up. In fact, I think most of you at two occasions turned up to 49 Bulcourt Street, which is our new building, to Puna. And in terms of the success of that building, I think, which we'll share later on, but that is now fully let, which is great, and it was 2 months ahead of schedule. From our normal forecast, so that was a great outcome for that building, and thanks for your participation, your questions during the tour when it was vacant before we started marketing it. Look, in May we did come to you and say that the rental market and the market generally is softening. Everyone, I don't have to prosecute the situation about not only the nation's malaise at the moment, but certainly the cities. And in a softening rental market, that's good for renters, of course, but with a project that is trying to be cost neutral, that is can be difficult. So we came back to you and explained some of the situation regarding the market. I'll give you a bit of an update again on that today, but at that request in May, we had an initial target of 1,000 units by 2026, and you pushed that target out to 28, but you also added some additional ambition. You asked us to go for another 500, so 1,500 by 2033. And that, I want to acknowledge is ambitious. Obviously, it comes with a lot of risk, and we're going to tackle that stretch target, I hope, as hard as we can. And I think there'll be some good news stories, and particularly about the Bulcourt Street building, about how well the program's been run, I believe, and how successful it is with the current tenants and the brand generally. So in the slide pack we sent out last night, I've really just given a high-level background to the program and its origins. It did start in 2018, started under the Mayor Justin Lester. I obviously arrived about 2020, and we've been working on the program since. That slide also includes some of the key decisions that happened through that time. The total number of units we now have at Te Kainga is 472, and that's across 6 buildings. I'll profile those buildings at the end of this presentation before we go into PX. We have, of course, 292 of those units under Te Kainga proper, but we've subleased 2 of those buildings, approximately 180 units. The officers have also recently taken an approach to the market, a registration of interest. Now, everyone will know that we're working very closely with the Wellington Company. The majority of those buildings I mentioned are all in partnership with the Wellington Company. Part of the board governance of this program was a decision to go to market and just make sure that there's no one out there that can do better because we have a great working relationship with the Wellington Company. They're an excellent partner, but we wanted to be absolutely sure and get some assurance that the market hasn't got anything out there that we can also look at. So we'll report back perhaps in PX and how that procurement process is going. In terms of the strategic context, for those councillors who perhaps weren't around for the housing strategy, council's had a vision for quite some time about housing, all Wellingtonians being well housed, and that's sitting in our current housing strategy. It sort of looks at a number of strategic outcomes, a well-functioning housing system. So we always look at ourselves in a continuum, and all the types of accommodation people live in Wellington, from rental all the way to private ownership, is part of our strategy. We look at where the market potentially is failing the residents and all of the Wellingtonians, and this program is really looking at trying to intervene and stimulate and encourage more affordable rental, because that was the area seen in particular stress at the time, and it still is, I might add. So in that context, the outside of providing great housing, we are doing a pretty interesting stimulus into the city. These buildings that are being converted to from commercial B and C grade buildings, which occupancy rates for those types and demand for those types of building aren't great, are getting them converted to residential obviously supports other benefits that the city realises. More people in the city, more people in the streets, more people spending locally also helps the proposition that the city is getting back on its feet again and recovering, and so you're also part of that. I think it's important we make that point. This isn't just about being cost neutral. There are other benefits that sometimes can't be quantified, which are definitely propping up and helping Wellington's recovery. So just a little bit of an updated commentary about the housing market. As I said before, we did come back to you and discuss matters in May in 25, just prior to the election. You set us some new targets, but you also, very astutely acknowledged the circumstances in which this program was operating. The housing market has continued to experience the sort of strongest rental market adjustment we've seen for a number of years. Good news for renters, good news for the type of people, key workers, and the people that run and live and work in the city. However, of course, it puts this program under stress, and we have to work even harder to ensure the product is where it should be, the offer is the top notch, and of course the tenants are happy and the brand stays strong. So just some quick data there. The Wellington rental market materially, its median rent fell 7% year on year. And that's a 6th consecutive monthly decline. The rents are now $80 lower than the start of beginning of last year. The easing rent reflects the supply issue. We have seen some economic headwinds for the city, and that has resulted in I guess to a certain degree, a flight of public service jobs, and that's compounding the difficulty in trying to place people in this rental accommodation, but also, of course, is putting downward pressure more generally across the market. Now, national rental demand, as I said before, it is a national problem. That is also down. It's not down to the same degree as Wellington, but it is falling. And as I said before, it's a good thing for renters, but it means we need to work quite hard to get the program where it needs to be. So when we came to you in May, we were hitting some of the buildings' occupancy levels well below our target. The committee should note that as we have a negative variance in our income any financial year, frankly, we have to inherit that in the following financial year and try to recover it. And I'll talk to that in a little bit more detail in PX. And that's an attempt to maintain the strategic objective you have for cost neutrality. And I've got the objectives up there on the slide there, and I'll go through those quickly. But to mitigate the impact, the team have been working really hard with a number of strategies to maximise the occupancy and minimise that operating loss. And as I said before, we've had some success, and particularly this recent building has been very, very successful. And I think that in a very challenging environment, that underlines the good product that the team has and that they're offering. Long-term cost neutrality, therefore, as a result of these ups and downs from year to year, is always going to be a struggle. And I want to sort of implore on the council that it needs to be viewed potentially as a stretch target. We're trying hard. But we'll talk in PX in terms of how we're going to try to address that cost neutrality over the 20 years, because as you know, these leases are signed for a 20-year period. We're working also, as I mentioned before, and we'll go into a bit more detail in PX about this ROI and the request for development proposals from the other market to ensure that we've got the right partners in the right buildings at the right price. So in terms of the objectives, there is 8 of them all up. This is about partnership. It's about the city building some reputational with the development community and showing that we're willing to work with them. This was about a supply issue, trying to get people to live more affordably in the city. You have a target at below market rent. We're currently hovering about 5 to 10% below market rent as we market these buildings, and that is obviously a determining factor. When you look at the quality of the units and apartments at 5 to 10% discount, people are seeing that value and they're choosing with their feet because our occupancy numbers show that. The delivery timeframes are something from a strategic objective point of view is from the time we sign a term sheet, a head of terms they call it, to the moment we sign the actual lease. We're in a race, and the race is to get the building up and running, to work with that development planner as fast as possible, remove any blockages that are there, and get that building to the market. So when that lease commences, we've got the income we need to pay the lease. A key part of this, 2 parts of these objectives really is, you want healthy homes, that we all do. It's part of your strategy, all Wellington's well housed, and you want LifeMark home ratings, which we all achieve as well. The lease agreement delegation is to the CEO. We continue to consult with you as we bring buildings online, but ultimately it's Matt's job to sign it up and make sure the lease meets all the criteria that you set us. We do have a pretty solid governance group on board. We've got 3 externals. We've got a commercial lawyer, a PwC financial manager, and we've got John Manns, of course, from Toi Mahana, who also sits on the program. John has some good insights about how the market's moving, and also, of course, that continuum of the housing market I spoke of earlier. He's running the city housing program through TTM and its and their tenants, and he's got a good ear to the ground. Benchmarking, an important objective that you set us. We monitor MB's tenancy services data, and we also compare to the local market, whether that's TradeMe or any other data we can get our hand on. That's monitored at quite a high frequency. We do that quarterly. The cadence of those governance meetings is 6 monthly, and they review those numbers. 6 weekly, and they review those numbers as they come through. Of course, the other component that you asked us to look into is accessibility. So the Disability Advisory Group were very keen when they ran last triennium on this program. They saw the council doing its best efforts to provide accessible apartments, and we have achieved that in a number of our buildings. So just to highlight some of the benefits, and for those councillors who don't know the program that well, these economic benefits are plain when it comes to more people on the streets of the city and the CBD. We did some analysis with Essential Economics, who were able to show that each person who moved into those apartments would, on average, per annum spend $5,800 in those restaurants and cafes and supermarkets. And that activity is important, of course, particularly at this moment in time. With 1,500 homes targeted for 2033, it's probably going to bring about 3,100 residents into the city that wouldn't otherwise have been there, that we would have left to other people to try to deliver. So that's a good story. And then from a tenant benefit point of view, just so we are all clear, they are quite an attractive lease arrangement, that they're open term leases, so they give 3 weeks notice. We don't ask them and won't be asking them to leave unless they're poorly behaved, and that is quite attractive to people. That permanency, that confidence in a trusted landlord is obviously playing into this this demand in my mind, and the team's mind, certainly from the resident surveys we've been conducting. And then, of course, we add little bits and pieces like free Wi-Fi, whiteware, rubbish collection. I mean, that amounts to about $45 a week in a reduction in costs that we've estimated, and of course we have a TK Plus offer. So whether that's local cafe, deals with gyms, Mevo, the car share offer, and occasionally when we have the tickets available, we offer the residents opportunities to go and see concerts and Hurricane football games, etc. So, all of that package, all of that marketing has made a bit of a difference. Just touching on this concept of improving and pumping up the city, the urbanisation that happens in the city of Wellington, part of our advantage is our density. And as I said before, with these recycling of these Class B and C office buildings and this intervention, creating these residential properties, helps with the urbanisation of the CBD. And this is actually a structural driver that is quite well publicised globally. Urbanisation of a city is a structural driver to growth. So when you add people, jobs and capital to a city, that tends to create productivity, it creates innovation and of course creates demand. So we shouldn't lose sight of that strategic objective. It is happening and working for cities that are successful and well managed throughout the world, and it's a very important investment opportunity that even the share market looks at. Urbanisation is one of the key structural drivers for investing. So this plan here is the locations. You visited Te Pū, I think on Balcott Street, so we have quite a high concentration of properties in the CBD. That seems to be the recipe for success. We're leveraging off the amenity of the city, and the people and certainly the popularity of the one-bedders are indicating that the type of people moving in there are the type of people that work and enjoy what a city is. And that was the original strategic objective of the program. Key workers, workers in the city more generally, people who run the city, work in the city, affordable rental and choice, and that's what we've got. So here's the current portfolio. We now have 6 buildings, and that's actually mostly in order, a chronological order actually, Tom, as well. Terrace being the last building you can see out your window here behind me, that has been subleased to City Housing to help them now with their decanting situation as they move through the HUP 2 program, a briefing that follows this one. And that just shows the sort of work the team's doing to try to find and manage risk as the market softened. Turns out, though, based on demand, I reckon we probably could have filled 114 the Terrace as well. And the other, of course, sublease we've got in place was with Victoria University and the Haining Street development. So I'll stop there for questions now, and we can spend some time just exploring, your thoughts, what we've presented so far, and then we can go into PX, and Tom will take you through some of the financials, and we can talk about some of the other market matters that are at play at the moment.
Thank you, Liam. Does any councillors, Mayor, have any questions? Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, just going back to the previous briefing when we were about to bring 49 Balcott Street online, there was a lot of, I guess, that concern around the movements that we were seeing in the rental market. But I guess what you've presented to us today is that the concerns haven't materialised, and instead what's happened is a 100% subscription 2 months ahead of time in a market where other people are struggling to place tenants. So I was wondering what you think that says about the program and whether that's changed your view of the, I guess, how real you think the risk is in terms of the program, realising that it's obviously still a risk.
Yeah, there is, and I've made that point a couple of times to the councillors. I mean, this is one of the programs that keep me up at night. There's a number of things across the Chief Planning Office portfolio that keep me up, but this is one of them. And I'm just as surprised, the team is surprised, but I think it reflects the product. And as I said before, the 5 to 10% reduction in rent that's competitive, the offers we do through the TK Plus program, the quality that the Wellington Company are providing, they're very, very high quality, kind of just-in-time manufacturing stuff. They're very clever at what they do, and we know that now. And I think also that permanency is a really important thing. I think a trusted, confident, a trusted landlord makes those tenants way more confident in signing. And this concept of community. Each of these buildings, the team quite focused on building a community within this vertical stack of houses, and that seems to play out, and this is why we name them different names, we brand them, and the team themselves is it from a customer service point of view. So I'm very surprised, Councillor, that yes, we've done so well over summer with this product, but I think it is making me a little bit more confident about the product that we're offering, and I think that's a good thing, because the data is the same. In fact, the trend has continued. Market has softened. Rents are $80 cheaper than they were a year ago. So, I think that's a testament to the team. Congratulations for that.
With the increased supply of rentals in the Wellington market, has any modelling been done to ascertain whether 1,500 is still required?
I suppose with the modelling, that's an ongoing discussion about what other buildings have been brought on at the time, what their offering is, whether that's more of a higher end or more of an affordable product. We're not seeing many affordable products being brought on at the moment, but we're certainly looking at what's out there, how that works, and when we bring on each building over time, we certainly consider the amount of listings that have been brought on at that time and the time that we would like to bring things on, so we're not saturating the market. And it's an ongoing discussion and modelling, but also looking at those population growth trends and how that looks over time. It's sort of a moving beast that we're continuing to evaluate.
Thank you. Councillor Tiefenbacher.
Yeah, originally I think we were targeting essential workers for these places. Have we broadened that maybe a little bit with the change in obviously demand?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, that was actually made before May. As I said, it does keep me up at night. I'm very risk averse, and so when we had a little hiccup with Haining Street, I've been trying to get ahead of the curve and watch the signals that are happening in the market. So a lot of this is like development generally. If you work with any of the developers, a lot of it is risk, very, very high risk, and this is effectively a development initiative, albeit slightly more conservative, I suppose. So when we see those trends happening, we want to get ahead of it, and that's why we made that decision around Haining Street to Vicuni. That's why we made the decision with 114 The Terrace. It was trying to predict where we were going. But no, I wouldn't have foreseen the outcome we've had over the summer with this new building on Bulcott Street.
Okay, and just one other question. The subleases, I assume they're at zero cost and zero risk to the council, the two subleases?
Zero risk and zero cost, sorry. Yeah.
We're subleasing it to other people?
Yeah, so the management of the building is maintained by the building operator.
Yeah.
We are just subleasing it. So Vic University, for example, at Haining Street, run the tenants, and effectively manage and service them and their needs.
Yeah.
So we just
we're cost neutral on that, or?
Well, I can talk a little bit about Haining Street and PX if that's okay. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Thanks. Obviously, it's in other parts of the world, it's not particularly unusual for the state to be a massive provider of rental accommodation. Have you done any sort of research or looked into any insights as to what, I guess, proportion of the rental market the state might want to control in order to begin to have an impact on the wider market in terms of rent levels, in terms of the conditions that are offered to tenants?
It's what we're trying to achieve is, I guess, more than just providing apartments or units to tenants. It's improving buildings. It's the livability of the city. It's buildings that have sent commercial buildings and offices which have sat empty. It's having people move there and repurposing them, and so having a number of people move into the city and, I guess, find their place there and what that might contribute to. But the total number that we're providing, we don't want to oversaturate it. We know that there's going to be different demands for different types, but like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a continuation of modelling and understanding what the market drivers are.
Yeah, but we haven't got any targets or studies that, in particular, that we've set, or you're set indeed with this program. So,
can I just add? We're also coming back in the next 6 months with the housing action plan for this triennium. So that's a workshop I think that's happening in March, and then will be a paper for you to then approve, and that will then set that work program for us. And we'll also be revisiting the housing strategy for adoption of the next iteration of it by 2028, when the current 10-year period of the current strategy finishes. And some of those types of things will go into that work.
Thank you. I'll come back to you, Johnny. We've got a long list and we've got to get into PX at some stage as well. Mia Little?
Yeah, thanks. Look, my only question was just about the 114, the terrace, and the using it to decant tenants from Te Toi Mahana properties, just knowing that, talking to some of their folks last week, they tend to like where they are. Do we anticipate any issues with transferring people into 114 the terrace from areas that are a long way away from where they might have built their community connections and stuff, and what risks there might be associated with that sense of dislocation?
Look, I think you should expect some concerns, but that's probably best for the next briefing, the HUP2 team, Your Worship. Yep, good question.
Councillor Calvert?
Yeah, just in terms of looking forward with this program, how does this fit into what some of the other community housing providers may be doing? And I know even our own one, Te Toi Mahana, recently reset its strategy and vision to also look at doing affordable housing. So are we just wondering, have we got... Are we joined up, because we've got limited resources, and how do we make sure that we make the best of what resourcing there is?
Yeah, I think, well, as I mentioned before, you may have arrived a little late, Councillor, but the Te Toi Mahana CEO, John Manns, is on the governance group of this particular program. So the good thing about John being there is you're able to share those sorts of insights. He's advising where the board's going for his own operation. And as Tom's indicated, we're constantly monitoring whether it's the Trade Me data or any other data sets out there which show where the housing supply is going, but also the type of housing being delivered, whether it's social or affordable. We're very careful and we pay close attention to those types of developments.
Have we just got one question, or? Yep, okay.
Councillor Foon?
Yeah, kia ora. Just under the partnerships banner, I'm just wondering if we're working closely alongside Wellington NZ in the areas where we've got economic uplift, for example, the tech sector, as this would feel like a good marry, because I understood that not having accommodation was one of the barriers to growing that sector. So just how are we working alongside them?
Our tenancy team and program team are working with recruitment companies, hospitals, tech. We're trying to get in touch with anyone to kind of get our brand out there, sell the dream essentially, so we can attract as many people to hit those occupancy targets. So not just them, we're going out far and wide.
Thank you. I'll allow one further question from Councillor Osborne and one further from Councillor Calvert.
Thank you, Chair. Have you looked at any opportunities for extending this program out into the burbs? I know, for instance, where I am, at the airport, about 5,000 people are employed there. I'm sure lots of them are not paid particularly high incomes. Think of something like the hospital in Newtown. This sort of accommodation near those sort of facilities would be, I think, pretty welcome.
In short, yes, we're definitely looking at what we can provide in the suburbs and whether this model suits that. But what we'll discuss a bit later in the PX through our ROI process is identified locations around the hospitals and universities which could suit this housing model.
Thank you. Councillor Calvert.
Yeah, look, I was just curious about the comment about the re-looking at the housing strategy and housing action plan, and whether officers are going to be taking into consideration what will be coming when the council resets its own overarching strategy, and in particular the triennium plan that will be coming out shortly.
Absolutely. We've set up those workshops, and then we'll make sure that that aligns with the direction that we're given by yourselves.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of the questions for this session. We'll now move into the public excluded portion of this session. We'll just pause for a moment to let Dem Services